So I didn't start off as a clinician. My interest in trauma was an outgrowth of my work on poverty alleviation and peace building. I started off studying why it is that so many peoples struggle under generational poverty and seemingly intractable conflict. I looked for answers across multiple disciplines, and as Alice said, eventually received a master's degree in the anthropology of social change and development, as well as a PhD in political economy and government from Harvard. I found many explanations, but it wasn't until I conducted research among North American indigenous communities in the 1990s that I began to really understand the damaging ongoing impact of historical atrocities and collective trauma. In my doctoral thesis over 20 years ago, I made the case to economists that undigested collective traumas continue to reverberate in many communities with devastating outcomes. And alleviating cycles of poverty, violence, and oppression require us to address these underlying issues of trauma. There's a Harvard Magazine article that I can refer you to that describes some of this work for those interested in learning more about that body of work. Here's a graphical depiction with time and duration on the horizontal and of the number of people affected on the vertical axes. So what I became primarily focused on were the traumas on the right side of this graph, the impact of multiple prolonged chronic traumas to both individuals, that's B, and to groups, D. To get at how collective traumas distort what the shamans refer to as our dreams, let's begin with the basics. Things that you know very well. We know that people experience something as being traumatic when they feel something precious is at risk and they can do little about it, whether that's something tangible like their life or the life of a loved one, or it could be something more intangible like threat to democracy. In any case, captivity, helplessness, and terror characterize the experience of trauma. Traumas tend to throw individuals into a state of existential crisis, a crisis of faith. They may ask themselves questions like these: how could this have happened to me? Why couldn't I have stopped it? Where were my trusted protectors? Parents, police, government officials, authority structure, when I needed them? Where was God? People who experience trauma can lose faith in themselves, in other people, and in a higher power. Survivors of trauma can come to feel betrayed and mistrustful, especially of those in position of authority. Sometimes this is because offenders have a power relationship over those they victimize. We also know that because of the extraordinary resilience of most people, no blow or series of events in and of themselves are necessarily traumatizing to an individual or have enduring traumatic impact. Whether an event has enduring traumatic impact depends on various factors, including the objective characteristics like the age of the victim or the characteristics of the event itself. And another is the individual's subjective experience of the event. In other words, traumatization is not just about the visceral experience of an event, but is in part a product of the meaning we make of the experience. Now, human beings are amazing creatures. We may differ from other animals, even the ones closest to us, the apes, because we are fundamentally meaning-generating machines. We like to make meaning out of everything that happens to us. And we create stories to try to explain why these things have happened as they have. In weaving explanations, we make manageable what previously might have felt unmanageable, particularly when telling the story of a traumatic event. A sense of control and power is restored to individuals robbed of these by the experience. So embedded in the stories we author following experiences of trauma are a series of assumptions, conclusions we have drawn, or an underlying moral of the story. So for example, someone I'll call Sarah grew up in a household where her father was a heavy drinker and regularly beat her mother. Now as an adult, she's managed to escape a violent relationship herself. Working with her, we find that a primary assumption she has is that, quote, men cannot be trusted. Also, she tells us, there's something wrong with me. I always screw up relationships. I don't deserve anything better. These are what I'm referring to as, and will refer to as, post-traumatic narrative subtexts. Mouthful, PTNs for short, post-traumatic narrative subtexts. I'll give you more examples shortly. But just keep in mind that typically people use the word narrative to refer to an explicit story that links events in a particular sequence in time. This happened, and then this happened, with a beginning and an end. Here, I use the term narrative loosely as a shorthand for the underlying subtext of these stories, the underlying meaning drawn from a sequence of events. So PTNs are the essential distillation or significance derived. It's the constituent elements and are a matter of perception and interpretation. In other words, there's a story, and then there's a narrative subtext, the song beneath the words. And these hidden narrative subtexts filter reality, but are assumed to be self-evident truths.